Hello, my sweet angels. Welcome back. We're going to talk about the last chapter in the textbook today, which is the media. Section 1, we're going to cover today, 2 and 3 the next. We're going to basically show how there have been different choices in the media, not just one. It used to be just newspapers. Now we're seeing lots of different things. We're going to see how consumers drive the media, and then different technologies that have impacted the level of political knowledge that we get because of the media. So, we have seen a lot of different talk about the media and what they're like and should they be trusted. We've seen this a lot lately because of the term fake news that was used by President Trump to discredit the news media. So the impression a lot of people have of the news is that they're either for themselves to make profit or they're for a particular side or party, not just the public. So this is a challenge that a lot of Americans face when watching the media, is to decide, is this true or is this fake news? So what do we mean by media? There's lots of different ways to discuss the media. There's the news media, which is just a broad term to focus on newspapers, magazines, radio, TV, internet sources, blogs about important events. And then there's social media, which is the form of electronic communication where users can share content with each other. But the question is, who funds this? What's the intent? The news media is a private organization. It's owned by about 6 basically conglomerates, and their goal is to make profit, just like any business's goal is to maximize profit. So what is their intent with that? They want the most viewership, and we're going to talk about how they get that. Social media is basically a free-for-all. It's just free forums to say how you feel about anything you want. So who funds this? Well, it's free to the consumer, but you can see this. These are also private organizations as well. Now, the media does have the ability to actually set public policy agenda by what they show. If they choose to focus on a certain topic, like they did in the summer of 2019, the big topic was the detention centers at the border. Lots of people focused on that. So that became a big topic on the agenda, which is like the to-do list of what the government needs to do. So it has changed over time. It does definitely play a large role in shaping our political culture and our attitudes towards government. And it's always been, free press has always been a cornerstone of American democracy. Obviously, it's one of the 5 freedoms that we have in the First Amendment. But obviously, things have evolved over time. It's much more readily available, and we see changes with that. Now, the mass media, if you've ever heard that term before, is just a source of information on a broad level that's meant to get to a wide audience. And it can be in any way: newspaper, radio, TV, internet, what have you. But journalists are the ones that create this news, present this news. Probably the most unbiased form of journalism where it's just straight up news would be from the Associated Press. Now, the Associated Press is a wire service. News journalists can't be everywhere all at once. So what they do is the Associated Press is this business of journalists who get stories, and then individual newspapers can buy those stories and print them in their newspapers. That's whenever you see an article and it says AP on it, that means that, like, the New York Times, for instance, doesn't have like Johnny Smith hired to do that. They pay the Associated Press to write that story, and then they publish it in their newspaper. Also, we see with many news outlets something called investigative journalism, where they will hire their own people to investigate stories about wrongdoings, usually in the government. We first started seeing investigative journalism with the muckrakers in the early 1900s with the progressive movement. That would be like Lincoln Steffens with looking at corrupt governments, and Upton Sinclair looking at like consumer goods that were gone bad. And then we saw this really hit again with the Watergate scandal, and it's kind of been a big thing ever since. Another type of media is broadcast media. Broadcast media is it's just basically radio and television, what you can hear or see. And it brings the stories into people's homes. And it allows people to have the same experience because they're exposed to the same stories. They also are the ones that televise presidential debates, the first one being the Nixon-Kennedy one. And these news network televisions stations like ABC, CBS, NBC, they cover news events and help Americans know what's going on in the country. And they tend to be what are known as talking heads, which basically it's like when you see a TV, you see a person there, and it's like they're the one telling you that information. And they tend to be trusted sources. Some people trust them, some people don't. They were much more trusted back in like the 60s and 70s. But because of the cable news and 24-hour news cycles, now things are more driven by ideology. So rather than just straight news, like you might have seen on the network news, now we're seeing definitely, like for instance, Fox News being driven by conservative ideology and CNN and MSNBC being driven by liberal ideology when they're sharing their news stories. So where do people get their news from? Still, amongst Americans, the greatest source of news you can see is television. That's number one. But something that probably should stick out in your mind is that there's been a drastic decline of people getting information from newspapers and a drastic increase of people getting their news from the internet. So here's the problem that we have with that. We have all different sources. We have digital platforms through which we can receive these sources. But that can also be bad because it's hard when you have too many sources, it's hard to know which ones are true and false. And then when we see, like I said, the news business is they're private businesses that want to make money. So their number one goal is to make profit. And how do they do that? Instead of just giving straight news, they try to entertain you versus just giving actual news. And because there's so many viewpoints, because they're more about entertainment than actual just straight news, this has definitely led to some polarization of people and getting information with the political news, which shuts out other viewpoints, which is, again, going back to Donald Trump calling it the fake news. Oh, hang on just a second. Technical difficulty. Go back. Okay, just 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is just kind of giving you an idea of how communication has changed over time. You can see that it didn't take us very long to understand how to use the internet. So moral of the story is because we caught on to it so easily, it was definitely easy for us to get the news from there. Let me get back to this. There we go. So basically, think to yourself, how do changes in the way news is produced and viewed impact American democracy? It definitely has, and I want you guys to think of ways it has. Have a wonderful day. I will talk to you later.